Our next speaker is Dean Elwood from Umony. Is that Umony?
If you like.
Umony, yo!
You and me.
Umony, yo! He's going to be talking to us about OpenSIPS and FreeSWTICH as an innovations platform for networks. As Dan's getting prepared, I'm going to throw a couple of quick announcements at you. One being that I'm grateful Giovanni had returned hardware. The second being that I don't want anybody to forget about this raffle that we have at the end of today. This beautiful riding OpenSIPS Harley-Davidson jacket can be yours if your number is pulled. Additionally, from our sponsors over at Telnix, we have a Bose SoundLink USB speaker. It's very heavy. And from our friends over at Asterisk and Digium, we have an A-series phone.
That's my water. Don't touch my water.
Are these as well?
Yeah.
Together or separate?
We can make a combo.
Okay. SIP happens, people. It really does. So I don't want anyone to like get up and run and leave. I do want to say that if you want some more information from Mr. Giovanni, he will be here and available during that roundtable hour. But what we'll do is we'll go through our presentations, we'll do the raffle, and then we'll open up the time to hit the speakers. So with no further ado, Dan?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Is that on?
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry about the cheap cat picture. Actually, I was looking for something that spoke to me. Yeah. No, of course I did. Like anyone pays for pictures of cats on the internet.
Crazy!
I was looking for something that said open source, and I couldn't find anything. But this is kind of how I feel about open source. It's just nice. So that's why I love it. A little bit of background about me, for those that don't know me. I've been doing this for a little while now. I founded a website back in 2002 and a SIP network back in the early days when it was Sir, Bogdan and others were involved in this project. I think it was part of their university project. Sir is like the grandfather of OpenSIPS. It's the original code base. We built with that, real old school stuff. We had about 70,000 subscribers on it. It was quite good for something that was, early days. Free world dial-up was, for those, some of you might remember free world dial-up, was about the only thing that was really else around at the time. I then joined TruePhone, an overly funded startup you might have heard of. I was their platform director, again, early on. I think in about the F round, I think I joined them. FreeSWTICH was a massive element of the TruePhone platform. We sponsored Anthony Minnesota in the early days, one of the places where the VC money went. I then founded a company called Voxygen, 2008. This is kind of my third platform. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on each of these. That for me, that was a combination of OpenSIPS, Camelio, usual suspects. The really interesting thing about Voxygen was we did a dark fiber interconnect with a major UK carrier. It was O2. We were tiny, and that's quite an unusual thing to happen. So we were literally, our OpenSIPS was plumbed into their core MSCs, and we could take any O2 customer and provision them, and they would loop and trombone via our platform. So we could kind of do cool stuff in the middle of mobile calls, which was really fun. Anyway, company was successful, sold it a few years ago. I founded Umony last March. Again, you'll see the theme, usual suspects here. I'm sticking with what I know. OpenSIPS, FreeSWTICH, there's some new stuff because we're getting involved more with WebRTC. So Janice, I know Lorenzo's here. I haven't met you yet, Lorenzo. I'd love to say hello. That's a big part of what we're doing. There's some amazing open source stuff out there as well. Calvi is an open source voice recognition system. I recommend you have a look at. It's complex. You have to bring your own corpus and build your own speech recognition engine with it. But it provides you amazing raw tools. OpenBR, biometrics recognition, really awesome. We have this plumbed into Janus, and we're doing face recognition, not detection, in conference calls. It's really fun and spooky. RabbitMQ, you know the rest. I can't say too much about Umony, but I was hoping to by today. But we've signed a big contract, and due to NDAs, I can't mention it just yet. But keep an eye; it's coming, probably end of June. A little bit about these platforms. My first platform, VoIP user, call it Platform Mark 1. Had an XML RPC API, for anyone who remembers those. It was the big thing in 2002, and the other thing that we could have used was SOAP, which was just too horrible to think about it. But we were doing call control stuff, so the way I look at it is actually, we built Twilio about 5 or 6 years before Twilio existed, so we were very, very, very nearly a very successful business, but ended up not being. But the really interesting thing about it was, again, this is great credit to open source tools and things like OpenSIPS that are available. We built it in a weekend and shipped it. So literally, a friend of mine and I got a bit drunk on Saturday, said, let's build a SIP network, launched on Monday. And that was actually a fantastic experience. TruePhone, a little bit more advanced, started to get into REST API platforms, was a good introduction into FreeSWTICH, which I'll talk about, was the second opportunity to be Twilio that didn't quite happen. Voxygen, like I say, the big thing about Voxygen was we had this core carrier interconnect, where we could trombone inbound and outbound mobile calls and do really interesting things with them. A couple of the things we did with call recording. Voxygen is the big call recording, mobile call recording platform in the UK, working with several international banks. We also came out with this really nice conferencing product called Just Call Me. If you Google O2 Just Call Me, you'll find it. But basically, if we're having a conference call tomorrow at 2 o'clock, tomorrow, we turn my mobile phone number into the conference bridge. So there's no pins. You get a pre-announcement that says the person you've called is on a conference call. If you've been invited, press 1. And we have a little bit of business logic that then basically brings you into the call. But the nice thing is about it, you dial my mobile phone number to join my conference bridge. Quite an interesting product. Also, well then, platform number 4 really was for Telefonica Digital. They launched a product called To Go, which predated Wi-Fi calling, but it was basically mobile operator Wi-Fi calling. Again, you'll see the theme, all FreeSWTICH and OpenSIPS, other than for support reasons, a couple of Acme Packet SPCs and stuff at the edge. The key thing for me, and why I love this stuff, is version 1 platform built in a weekend. Didn't go anywhere, could have been Twilio. Now, Janus is available. Any of you guys can go and build a really interesting web RTC platform next weekend and launch it on Monday. It's absolutely doable. By version 3, I was getting reasonably good at this. Next one, actually, we built a significant business on top of, and it was very successful. Talked about mobile call recording and Just Call Me products. Both of those were built in a few days on top of a platform based on OpenSIPS and FreeSWTICH. The Just Call Me product actually was an idea which came to me mid-meeting with O2. And that, I think we had the meeting on the Monday, and by Friday we were in O2 demoing the product. You can't do that any other way than using these tools. More information about us later. So, some issues. Obviously, the software is available. It's mature. It's brilliant. My experience of the last 6 or 7 years has been integrating with Tier 1 mobile carriers. So the rest of this is really about some of the technical challenges and business challenges I had around doing that. Interop is the primary one. Whilst SIP is meant to be a standard, it isn't. Everyone has their own way of interpreting the standard. I think we were integrating to Ericsson session border controllers, and it took quite a lot of tweaks to get it to work right over months. So sort of the first, it's always the last 5% of any project that's the hard bit. The first 95%, we had integration and we had basic call flows working in a few days. But to get the fine tuning right, to get early media working correctly, all of that stuff took months. Voxygen had an O2 focus. The new business is a little bit more multi-carrier, and we're working actually with a number of carriers and doing interop with some really complex things. SIP-I, SIP-T, I don't know whether anyone in the room has come across those, doing anything with any of these? Not many, but yeah, you're there. I'm sorry. But the OpenSIPS SIP-I module is brilliant, and that does take away a lot of the pain. The key thing that I've found is that carriers want to see a specific flow. So the networks team within a carrier will have a set of call flows. This is what an outbound call looks like. This is what an inbound call looks like. And they will not budge. So it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter that what you're doing is very slightly different. It doesn't affect billing. Doesn't affect user experience or any painful things. Doesn't matter. If it doesn't look like their flow chart, it's not getting through QA. So the typical stack that I now use, and this has been used in the carrier integrations I've done and am doing, is this. Typically, carrier will have, it's usually an Ericsson or a gem band SBC on the edge of their network, and we have some private dark fiber that comes into our data centers. Everything's over private infrastructure for security. And typically that'll hit an OpenSIPS, we call it the Umony SBC. The reality is it's our first OpenSIPS box. I like splitting up the tasks like this. So the first thing is kind of like layer 1 security. It will do things like rate limit, we'll do some basic policy enforcement and have some access controls. It's actually a really, really important layer to have, and it's very important that you have a high throughput, high-speed system like OpenSIPS doing this, because although you'd think it's a carrier partner and a dark fiber interconnect, you know, what risk are you of a DDoS attack? Well, the DDoS attack comes from the carrier. So a certain very large carrier, by mistake, provisioned all of its users to hit our platform. Not for very long, thankfully, but it's about 25 million customers, and we peaked at, I think, 260,000 concurrent calls hitting our little OpenSIPS box, which survived, by the way. The database completely died, but OpenSIPS survived here. So I think even when you're doing private interconnects, it's still worth bearing in mind a lot of the things that are designed for security will actually help you protect you from your best friend, who might tread on you by mistake. Next thing we have down the stack is our SIP-I gateway. This is for when we're connecting with carriers that insist on ISUP. For those of you that don't know SIP-I, it's basically SIP with a binary bolt-on to the message that contains a load of ISDN data that the telco think that they need. The reality is it could have all gone in SIP headers, but for some reason they don't want to do it like that. So what happens on the SIP-I gateway, and this is basically OpenSIPS with the SIP-I module, and we hired the OpenSIPS team to help us tweak it how we needed it. Basically, when a SIP transaction comes in that's got a SIP-I body, the SIP-I gateway strips it away, the call continues down into FreeSWTICH as regular SIP call. So FreeSWTICH doesn't have to know anything about SIP-I because it complains if it sees it. And then on the way back upstream, the SIP-I gateway bolts it back onto the B leg. Has taken us, I say us, it's OpenSIPS team and my team, quite a good 4 or 5 weeks of work to get that working right for one particular carrier. I would think they're probably all about the same. We use FreeSWTICH as our application server at the core. So I think this is a typical, I think several of the conversations I've seen and the presentations have had something like this. OpenSIPS at the core, OpenSIPS at the edge, FreeSWTICH at the core. Our objective as an innovations platform is to make ourselves really easy to interconnect to a carrier. So I love this expression. I think I stole it from Cisco. They talk about being the bump in the wire. So the idea is that the carrier can bolt this stack in place and sit in the middle of calls, and they wouldn't know it's there. Don't notice anything different. Now the easiest way to make yourself look like you're not there is to be a proxy. Giovanni was talking about proxies and B2B UAs earlier. We would really like to be a proxy, but we can't. We have to be a B2B UA because we want to be doing clever stuff down the application layer. We might want to initiate a buy, for example, to both legs. This is in Voxygen, for example, doing mobile call recording. Down here somewhere would be a call recorder, and if for any reason the call recorder fails, what the customer wants is the call gets dropped. So we need to know that a call has dropped down here and we need to be able to act on it. We also might want to play whisper messages to both parties, that kind of stuff. So being a B2B UA down here means we're not really a proxy, but we kind of want to be a proxy. Why do we want to be a proxy? Well, I said earlier, carriers want to see specific flows. And here are the two very painful examples I'm sure a couple of you in the room will have experienced. Classic one is hold release. So this is a basic, an outbound call where we're tromboning through our platform from the carrier. So a user on a mobile phone places a call, carrier sends us a SIP invite, we'll say it's got SIP I on it, hits our SBC, strip out the SIP I stuff. Master bus is just a fancy name for our load balancer. Again, it's OpenSIPS doing a dispatcher type role. Sends it into a FreeSWTICH. Problem with FreeSWTICH as a B2B UA is that effectively this leg gets answered here, and FreeSWTICH goes, they want the call placed on hold, and FreeSWTICH places it on hold down here. And that's not what we want. What we want is actually for FreeSWTICH to simply proxy the whole re-invite message all the way back upstream, because the carrier wants to be able to play the audio file. And even when we've been down here and we've taken a copy of the carrier's audio file and we're playing their audio file, it's exactly the same pip. The carrier says, the flow's not right because I can't see the RTP flow on B leg. So these are the kinds of challenges we have. Early media is another really classic one, 183s. If you Google 183, 180 and Anthony Minnesala, you'll find his view on this within FreeSWTICH, which is, I'm a B2B UA, go find a proxy, try OpenSIPS if you want to have a 183 followed by a 180. For those of you that don't know, 183's an early media signal that says, I'm progressing, 180 says the other side is ringing. Most carriers need one following the other. FreeSWTICH will not do it. Anthony Minnesala is violently opposed to making it do it, and he's done his best to try and stop it. We've hacked it, and we've managed to fix it down here in FreeSWTICH. And there, if you Google around enough, you'll find some starter source code that will get you to doing that if you ever have to. But these are the types of challenges that we see. We want to be a bump in the wire. We want to be a proxy. But we have to be a B2B UA if we want to add any value in the middle of the call. So my dream platform, and I still don't think I'm quite there yet, I think it's going to be version 6 or 7 before I get there. My dream platform truly looks like a proxy but isn't. That's kind of what I'm working on at the moment. So learnings on this journey so far, particularly recently with my new business, the SIP-I module is awesome. If you ever have to do any SIP-I interop, don't panic, just install that module, phone RAS or bog down if you need to. Our gateway layer built on it literally takes all of that pain away, and below our SIP-I gateway it's pure SIP, and life is very, very easy. I just want to say I hired the OpenSIPS team. They've become an extended part of our team, and we hope to continue a long, ongoing relationship with them. They are awesome. For all we talk about open source, at the end of the day, people have to make a living. I can't recommend them highly enough. They're brilliant to work with, and I mean, who better to hire than the people that wrote the thing that you're working with, right? So don't forget that there are commercial options with those guys. Another comment on open source, both FreeSWTICH and OpenSIPS in particular. I have found over the last 15 years or whatever it is now, watching these things develop, the config files is like writing code now. The complexity and power that you have down in config is fantastic. This is what is exciting me today. So it's kind of talked a lot about OpenSIPS and FreeSWTICH. The things that really excite me, Janus, that actually reminds me of how FreeSWTICH was back in the early days when Anti-Minnesota first sort of forked Asterisk and started doing with it. It's moving incredibly fast. I can't keep up with it. Every time I add something, you've moved on so far, it never merges. But that's fantastic. It'll slow down and fall into a more regular pattern, I'm sure. But the fact that it's moving so fast is great. I love the architecture of it. I like things that are based around fast core with optional modules. It's got Lua, which gives it a nice link, I think, with FreeSWTICH, which has Lua as well. That's what we use at application layer. I think Caldi is really exciting. Again, this is not low-hanging fruit stuff. If you play around with Caldi, trust me, you will lose 2 days getting Hello World working with it, but I think you'll find it incredibly rewarding because it is fantastic. OpenBR is a little bit easier to get into, and that's fantastic if you want to play around with voice speaker detection, which you might want to do from some of the telecom stuff that you're doing. Face recognition if you're doing video. Containers, the new business, all the new stuff that we're building in Umony is all sitting on Kubernetes platform and is really exciting. So we have everything in Docker and we can just spin this stuff up really easily, which is nice. Obviously, the best open source release of the year is OpenSIPS 2.4. I think that's kind of pretty much it. Yeah, so open source is great. I've had 15, 16 fantastic years building platforms with it, and I hope some of that's been of some interest.
Sorry about the cheap laugh.
So, do we have questions? Yeah, okay, over there. Oh. For sure, I will do my steps for today.
Yeah.
I have one question regarding CPI. Are you converting the info messages from suspend and resume to reinvites for hold and
To re-invites.
to reinvites?
Yeah, so we're pure set underneath. We have to be because we want to use FreeSWTICH and we don't really want to have to change it. So the objective with the gateway is to create this bump in the wire scenario. So we have to convert it down to send only and receive only re-invites. It's really hard.
Okay. But you're converting the info messages to reinvites?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I answer? So, Flavio, it's not actually just re-invite. You don't get infos. So
It really depends on the implementation, because there are implementations
That's
where they
correct.
send suspend and resume as info messages.
Right. But now in our implementation or that implementation, we don't really need to do any conversion.
Thanks.
That's what happened.
When you drop the zip I on the invite, on the incoming invite, then you have to put it back for example, 180 ringing. Do you have a logic that maps the zip headers to these zip I parameters inside the body? So just to give to have a feel about it.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. But again, Razvan, I think you're probably better taking that.
Yes, we are mapping the first leg with the second leg and try to fetch the entire CPI indicators and put it back on the second leg. Any other questions?
Good.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome presentation.
Thanks, Raz.
Let's give a round of applause.